What's going on, guys? Ben from JK Gear and Gadgets, and in this video I'm finally getting around to adding a switch pod for all the electronics on my Jeep. This has been an upgrade that I've been meaning to do for a while, and I'm finally getting around to it. So we're gonna take a look at the system I went with, we're gonna install it, and then talk about the benefits of it. So let's go ahead and dive right on in. So I want to start off the video by saying welcome to the channel. For those of you that have been around here for a while, welcome back to another episode. And for those of you that are new, go ahead and smash that subscribe button. We do all types of Jeep install videos, reviews, tips and tricks, and off-road videos. So it's a one-stop shop for Jeep YouTube videos. Let's get back on track. Today I am installing an Stech Switch Pod for my Jeep. Little backstory, when I first started out modding my Jeep, I didn't plan on going too crazy, but as you can tell now, there's been a ton of aftermarket mods done to it. But electrically wise, I only wanted to do, a light or two, and that was it. So I started off by purchasing the little 4 switch A-pillar pod, and it worked. I went and bought a little fuse block, bunch of relays, and wired it myself. But after a while, once you start adding more and more upgrades and electrical accessories, the wiring starts getting wonky, it's harder to troubleshoot, and it doesn't look as clean. So that is where these switch pods come into play. Super easy to set up. Electrically, everything's done for you. It's almost plug and play. So I teamed up with Stech. I got the 6 switch system, and they also have switch pods for the JL, the JK, the TJ, as well as a universal switch system. So I went on Stech and got everything I need just to be done with electrical upgrades. The great thing about Stech, the switch systems, is that you can custom make your switches. So I went with off-road lights, rock lights, front diff lock, rear diff lock, compressor, and I couldn't figure out what I wanted that 6th one to be, so I went with a little USB charging port. So you can customize it online. There is an extra charge, but I figured I want to go ahead and do that now. You could just go ahead and order all red or all blue, but I thought this was pretty neat. Get them all in one place. They all look the same, and you don't have to worry about mismatching the switch colors and like how they look with all those. A lot of people go on Amazon and get the custom ones, but you order from a few different vendors, and it doesn't look as clean because they're not all the same. But as you can tell, right there, made in USA. That's always great. It is already wired. It has our little plug up here. We are gonna install this above the rear view mirror. It also comes with the relays and fuses inside here. We'll pop this cover off real quick, show you what. We have 6 relays, 6 fuses, and everything is already wired up. It came with a bracket. Man, the lighting is horrible right now, I'm sorry. It came with a bracket to mount this box under the hood. It came with a nice 60 amp circuit breaker for the power wire, instructions, and pretty much everything we're gonna need to put this in the JK. So let's get to it. It shouldn't be too bad of an install. Let me show you guys what I was dealing with before this. You can already tell there's wires everywhere, and that's one of the reasons I want to go with this kit and just clean it up. So there was my little fuse block that I made at first, and then you can just see now this is out of control. This is what you do not want on your Jeep. You don't want a bunch of power wires. So we're getting rid of all this. We're gonna clean this up. That's going in the trash. And then the bunch of little relays over there, those are going in the trash. So that is what's really convenient about this kit, is it's gonna clean up the underhood of the Jeep inside, and honestly, it's gonna be a really simple install. You don't have to be an electrician. You don't have to know anything about electricity to be able to wire this up. So let's go ahead and open the instructions, see what to do first, but I have a pretty good idea of what we're gonna be doing. So the first order of business is to get our control box and bracket mounted together. All we're gonna do is use the bracket, line it up like this so the Stech wording is facing out, and we're going to use the included hardware and simply install this bracket onto the box. I found it a lot easier just to get these bolts and nuts started before we actually attach the bracket to the Jeep. So we are going to grab a 10mm and loosen, actually remove this one all the way, and then loosen this forward bolt so we can slide the bracket underneath the bolt. There we go. Get this one. Now that we have our bracket nice and secured, it's time to secure the control box. I still have a bunch of my old wiring kind of in the way. I'm going to work around it for now. My plan is to get this install done, rip out all my old stuff, and then hook it right back up. But let me move it around, and right there is where we're going to want to mount it. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten this down. So we got the control box and bracket mounted. One thing I will say is that mine is currently kicked up at an angle. It still fits under the hood, but the reason for that in my situation is because this is where all my previous wires and relays were mounted, and I haven't quite ripped everything out yet. I want to get everything hooked up with this system before I start ripping everything out. But it does clear the hood now, and it's going to sit a lot more flush once I rip all this out. But the next step in the process is going to be to attach our ground wire, and that is going to mount right here on the body. A little 10mm nut holds that on, and as you can tell, I already have a bunch of wires in use there. I'm going to take those off and reattach our new ground wire right there. Now that we got the control box mounted, it's time to actually work on putting our switches in. So this is going to sit up here above the rear view mirror. So in order to install this, we're going to remove our windshield trim from the inside. To do that, all you need to do is remove both the driver and passenger sun visors. There's two screws in there that are little, T10 Torx bits. We're going to take both those off. So now that I have the visors removed, I'm going to pull this little piece of trim down out of the way and yank and get those clips off, and then simply finagle this out. So that now it's time for the fun. So they include a template here for the cut job. It's really not going to be that hard. I need to go ahead and wash this off after because there's a lot of dust that collected up in there. But the end goal is going to have this to sit nice up and flush against here. So with the provided cutout, we are going to tape it on this top line and the bottom line, and this is going to show us exactly where to drill and then cut out. I really want to position this right in the middle, so I'm going to measure from each side until I find the center. There we go. So this is nice and centered in the middle. Now that we found that, I'm going to tape off each corner so it doesn't move around on us, and we are going to mark our cuts. So to mark the spots where we are actually going to make the drill, our holes, I'm going to use a little punch, spring-loaded punch right in the middle, and hopefully it'll leave a nice indentation in the plastic. And I'll do it a few times just to get a good mark. If you don't have a nice spring-loaded punch, I would definitely recommend getting one. It makes drilling and just all types of projects so much easier. So there we go. We have our two drill holes where we're going to drill and our cutout. So next, cut this sucker out. There we go. So now that this is cut out, as you can tell, there's still a lot of plastic. It's pretty ugly. I'm gonna use my razor blade now just to go and clean up this cut and get all that plastic nice and even. so we can test fit this switch. And it looks like I might need to cut it out a little bit bigger. Honestly, I don't think you can cut it out too big because, as you can tell, the cutout just needs to go around all these wires. It'll be protected, you know, from the looks of it by this plastic housing. So what it's gonna do is simply slide up in there and the outer housing is gonna cover that hole. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut out a little more with the Dremel and then go from there. Just keep test fitting, cut, test fit, cut, test fit. All right, so everything has been cut. I had to make a few cuts just to make sure it all fit inside there from behind. I still need to clean this up, wash the whole thing, and of course, drill those 2 holes. But as you can tell, it fits in there nice and snug, and honestly, that's gonna look really good. Right now, there's a little gap here on the side, but once we drill those holes and suck it in with the bolts, it's gonna give us a nice, flush, clean look. But now that I know that my hole's drilled big enough, I can go in there with the razor blade and clean up all these little burnt pieces of plastic. Time to drill. So I went ahead and rinsed off all that dust, cleaned this up a little bit, and it's time to actually attach the face of the switch system to our panel. We're gonna set it here. This is gonna attach using 2 tiny little set screws. The set screws are gonna go in from behind, thread into here, and then we're gonna put nuts on the back side. So set this aside, position our switch system inside our cutout, move all the wires so none of them are pinched, slide it in. Oh, still got one more wire right there. And then the fun part is going to be trying to get this set screw to start inside here. Okay, so we're back. I've been messing with the set screws and this the nut in there for probably about 10 minutes. What I've decided the best way to do this is either drill it at the correct angle, mock it up and see what angle you're gonna need to drill at, which is almost, if you angle this down, it's flat. You don't wanna drill it straight down. So I've already drilled it. What I'm gonna do is drill it out a little bit bigger than the actual size, just so I can move that stud up and down so it can thread in a lot easier. So what I'm talking about is drilling this hole out a little bit bigger so I can move this stud up and down and back and forth just to try to align it a little bit better. And let's see if it works. There we go. So that's what I was talking about. As you can tell, the angle you would have to drill this would be a lot different than going straight down. It's almost a sideways drill. But that side is in. All we're gonna do is use the provided nut and tighten it down. And that's what's gonna secure this switch pod to our trim once we tighten this down nice and tight. But I still have to get this other set screw in. I'm gonna do that, tighten it down. And hopefully we don't run out of daylight before this video's over. Might have to go until tomorrow. So we have the switch pod on our plastic trim. Honestly, the install wasn't too bad. Yes, you do have to drill, you do have to cut, but you are going through plastic, so it's really not that bad. You're probably wondering now, well, Ben, don't some of the other companies offer brackets that this switch pod connects to? And yes, that is true. But a few things I've noticed about those systems that use brackets is the fact that when you go to remove your hardtop, that little buckle that goes right there on the footman's loop, that's where they put those brackets. So if you're running a spider web shade or alien sunshade, some type of mesh top, it really kind of gets difficult taking your hard top or messing with that sunshade because you have a big bracket there. The good thing about this system is once you cut it and install this, there is no bracket in the way to remove your hard top. It's in there, it's good to go, there's no brackets that are gonna get in your way. A few things I will say about this, which I already mentioned a few minutes ago, is I would go ahead and cut out the template a little larger than what they provided, just to give you a little bit of wiggle room. But naturally, you know, what I'd always like to do is just cut with a template that says test fit, and if you need to cut it out bigger, do that. As for the stud holes where we drilled, I would definitely go ahead and drill that out larger, just so you have some wiggle room to get that that stud started on the actual switch assembly itself. But that's done. It didn't take too long, probably 20 or 30 minutes, but the hard part is done. But sadly, it's winter time, so it's getting dark extremely quick, and I don't have a garage big enough to bring the Jeep in. So that's all I'm gonna do tonight. Tomorrow morning, I'm gonna get back at this video. All we have to do is run the wire from the control box up to the switches inside, and then apply power to the switch box. So we're almost done. A couple more, you know, another 30 minutes, hour, and we're gonna be done. But I'll do that in the morning when we can go outside and get some better footage. So I'm gonna head inside, it's getting cold. See you guys in about 3 seconds. Good morning. It is a perfect Saturday morning for an install, or actually finish this up. So last night, we finished up the switch pod, the actual switches up on the trim. And then today, all we have left is to route the wire, little connector, from the actual control box up inside to where the switches are gonna mount. So the instructions showed us, they had 2 different pictures how to run this through the firewall. There's a little grommet on the firewall where your windshield wiper or the fluid hose goes through the firewall. Pulled that grommet off. I'm gonna cut it and snake this wire all the way through to the inside. So there is a different place for manual and automatic transmissions where it runs through the firewall, and the instructions show you exactly where it is and how to do it. So got the cable pulled through. The easiest way to do it is almost with 2 people. Have somebody inside here in the floorboard looking up while the other person's pushing. Once you start see it coming down, help pull it through, because this clip wants to get caught, you know, kind of caught on any surface it's gonna touch. So once you start pulling it through, you're gonna have to reroute it up through this side piece here. Now that we have it through here, we're gonna run it up through the A-pillar and through this, all this trim over towards the windshield. It'd be a lot easier if you did remove the piece of trim, actually both pieces of trim. But in my case, I think I can just sneak it up and through because removing this top piece of trim isn't much fun with these grab handles in the way. You gotta take them all off. So I'm gonna try to snake it up through, and hopefully I can get it on camera, but we'll see. So I was able to get this routed up through without removing the trim. It would be a lot easier if you did take the trim off, but if you don't want to, a little screwdriver just to pry up the corner and tuck it in from behind, up and around. So now that we have this ready to go, we're gonna bring our new switch pod in here, hook it up, and pop it back into place. All right, so we are done inside up here. As you can tell, this looks nice and really sleek. And this is what I was talking about earlier with the bracket. So you can tell how close this switch pod is to this footman's loop and hardtop knob, as well as this little bungee ball. So if you had a bracket here, it really makes it difficult to get up in here because the bracket's gonna go right around there. So with this switch system, it doesn't interfere at all with that. But what we're gonna do now is put in our 2 bolts for our sun visor and then go hook up power to our control box. And we'll test this out and see how they look. All right, so now that we got everything done, I went ahead and ran this power wire across the rear firewall and down to here for now. So the kit has 2 different power wires. This one right here with the little ring terminal is the actual power that's gonna go to all your accessories. This little guy right here acts pretty much as the trigger. So while this one carries the power, this guy is gonna tell our switch panel when to come on and when, you know, to be able to operate. So the instructions say that we can use this little fuse tapper into the M9 fuse, which is an ignition source. So that means that our switches and switch pod will only work when the key is on and in the on position. Personally, I want to operate my switches anytime, whether the keys are in the Jeep or, you know, no matter what. I want to be able to, you know, turn my rock lights on when I'm working on the Jeep and my keys are inside. So I'm going to put this straight to the battery. If you don't want to do that, you know, if you might accidentally leave your lights on or something, you can tap in with this included little fuse tapper into the M9 fuse spot, and they have instructions on how to do that. But I'm going to wire both these to the battery. Now, I did mention earlier that they included this circuit breaker, and that's a really good idea because this power wire is not fused. So if for some reason, you know, you nicked this, it could short out and, you know, either, you know, melt the wires or, you know, do some really bad damage. So what this thing does is going to have this wire on one side and then another wire on this side to the battery. But guys, I would highly recommend hooking up this circuit breaker just because it's going to protect it from, you know, an overload, and it's also going to help in case some reason this wire shorts out. So we're in the Jeep, and the first thing I noticed is that since I hooked it directly to the battery, these lower lights are going to stay illuminated. What that means is eventually, if I let the Jeep sit here for a month or two without starting it, this could slowly drain the battery. Granted, they're tiny LED lights, so I really don't think they're going to drain the battery, but we'll see. If you're worried about these staying on, then you would just follow the directions and hook that trigger wire into the M9. So the M9 fuse spots, which these lights would only come on when your key is in the ignition. But the lights, as you can tell, illuminate once you actually press the switch. So definitely looks pretty neat. Big fan of this 12-volt outlet, so I can charge, you know, my phone from below and maybe some GoPros up here while I'm on the road. That's definitely really neat, you know, and I can always change this out with another switch if I need to add something extra. But this looks really good. It's nice and flush, and overall the quality is amazing. So I'll do a review here, you know, a couple months after I've had this for a while, and let you guys know if this eventually, you know, happened to drain my battery, but I don't see that it will. So we'll take a look at that later on, and if I need to, I will figure out a way or just hook it up to that M9 fuse. But I really like having the option of just coming out here without my keys and be able to turn my rock lights on or my air compressor without having to have my key inside the ignitions. I really wish I would have got this right when I got the Jeep or before I started adding lights and other electrical accessories, because this is going to make it so much easier to hook up kits. You don't have to worry about a relay. You don't have to worry about a fuse. You just go underneath the hood, which I'll show you, and hook up your power wire to it, and then ground it. So where did that go? Here is all the output connections. They are labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and that's the directions that the switches are. So what we're going to do now is just simply test each one. I'm going to go grab a pod light and just put it in there and make sure all of these actually work. So we are done. Overall, I'm very satisfied with how this thing looks inside the Jeep. It cleans it up a lot, and the install was not bad. The hardest part is going to be drilling and cutting your factory trim piece up top. Everything else, very simple. Their instructions are really good. They include instructions in the kit, and they also have instructions online. I really would recommend this to any new Jeep owner or anybody else that's trying to figure out how they want to, you know, hook up and wire their electrical system. This is almost foolproof. It's going to clean up the wiring. It's going to be a lot safer, and it's easier. So if you buy, you know, some new lights or an air compressor, all you have to do is hook it up to the positive output that's already there for you, and then ground it, and you are done. No more messing around with relays or fuses or any of that. It's definitely something I would recommend. Great price, great product, and it's made here in the USA, so that's always a plus. But I should have done this sooner because now I got to go through and rip out all my old wiring and hook it up to this stuff. But if I would have just done this from the beginning, it would have made everything a breeze. I'm going to try to do another review here in a month or two and let you guys know whether these those little lights that stay on do any, you know, if they drain the battery at all. I really don't think they will, and I do think I can figure out a way to get those lights to come off just permanently, and the only thing that would come on is that top light showing that the light is on. So we'll see. I still got to go through and change out all my my wiring to this, and then you know, go from there. I really like it, big fan of it, and honestly, I'm tired of messing with my electrical system, so this is one way just to be done with it. But like always, give this video a thumbs up if you will, guys. Subscribe to the channel and stay tuned. We have a lot of new products coming for the JK and the LJ over there as well. So stay tuned, guys. Thanks for watching. Like always, this has been from JK Gear and Gadgets, and keep on Jeeping on.